Hi everyone, my name is Khaled with KINETIQ, and today I want to talk to you about a problem that affects a lot of segments or functions within your business. And we see this when we talk to finance, sales, and operations leaders. And the challenge is that everybody is looking at their own slice of the business, but no one is looking at a cohesive picture that reflects the entire cross section of the company. And so we worked with a lot of folks in the past where each function has a legitimate view of their narrow purview of the business, but none of them that connects across the organization. And so finance can see data in the ERP, they can see P&L information and GL entries. Of course, sales can see the CRM and pipeline. Operations can, of course, see capacity, output, and production schedules. But none of them can see an end-to-end picture or be able to stitch together how their slice of data actually fits into the larger picture. It makes a challenge when you want to actually plan for the future of the operation, when you need to do cross-functional planning. So the business is often being planned in three different directions at once because no one can see a unified picture of how this all comes together in the data. And so we see this all the time where sales, operations, and finance come together for planning cycles, and we spend a lot of time debating the numbers, not actually making decisions. And so each function pulls reports out of their own data where their own definitions differ. People are defining different metrics or the same metrics differently based on which data source they're pulling it from. And that means they end up coming to different conclusions and no one can agree. Planning meetings actually surface the disconnects instead of resolving them, and the debate ends up being about the numbers and how trustworthy they are as opposed to the business and the decisions that need to be made. So decisions get made without a shared baseline or a shared understanding and context of the data, and each function proceeds with their own version and in their own direction, sometimes diverging. Now, that misalignment quietly compounds every cycle, so that small discounts and assumptions become large gaps in performance. So the problem isn't that anyone is wrong, is that no one is looking at one governed shared picture of the same business. And when your function heads in finance, operations, and sales are all looking at different pictures, it's very hard for them to create a cross-functional plan that actually works for the whole company. And so what it looks like to solve this is when you move from that disagreement about the data and start focusing on the direction of the business given a shared data context. When you have one governed data set that actually solves for all three functions and they can all use it to plan against, you don't have three different data sets and you don't have three different versions of the truth. Everyone has the same definitions of metrics with the same refresh timing and the same baseline so that finance, sales, and operations are all looking at one picture. Now, when each function has their own slice of data, but it connects to everyone else's, we can also make our plans understanding how that might impact the other functions in the business and actually have a clear picture of what's going to happen if we each pull our own individual levers. Now, meetings end up starting with that shared picture, and disagreements are about the direction and the decisions we need to make, not about the data quality itself. And whenever there is a misalignment, we can surface it early where there's time to address it, not after commitments have already been made and plans have been created. Now, the journey that folks are trying to go on when they do this is they want to go from parallel planning to connected planning. And what that looks like is, well, today a lot of folks have different functions with different directions. Each plan has its own data, its own reporting, its own assumptions, and we're walking in different directions without realizing until the plan breaks down mid-quarter. What it looks like when you succeed is you have one governed data set with each function having their own view into it so that planning starts from an aligned basis and stays aligned all the way through the cycle. Now, a lot of folks are looking for where they can get started on this process, and that's why we work with sales, finance, and operations leaders to create a blueprint. And what that blueprint is a focused diagnostic where we map where your planning data diverges between functions and where there's gaps. We identify what's driving that disconnect, and we define what a centralized governed planning layer would look like to build so that you have a roadmap, an architecture, and you know where to start. So if that does sound like you, if this is a problem you're dealing with, you can get in contact with our team and we'll work with you to figure out exactly where and how to start and how to unlock this value for your organization.